China rolls out red carpet for Narendra Modi. All eyes on high-stake talks and handshake. Modi, Xi and Putin. Troika in Tianjin. Triple trouble for Donald Trump amid tariff tyranny. Is a new global order in the making? RIC's revival to rattle Donald Trump. Top focus on India today.
From the points of being an important port city, but also a very important industrial hub. And this is where China is showcasing its industrial power. This is where the 25th Shanghai Cooperation Organization summit is happening. Now, usually when an SCO summit happens, all the SCO member countries watch these developments very closely. But this meeting is special because it's not just the Eurasian bloc, the Europe and Asian bloc with several giants, India, China, other countries in Asia, but also Russia are looking at this summit very closely. Of course, from what top sources have already told India today, the Western apprehensions of an RIC or a Russia-India-China troika posing a threat, that's not happening this time. But what's very crucial, the images that you have on your television screen is the grand reception for Prime Minister Narendra Modi when he arrived here after a very successful visit to Japan. And Japan has been one of the main success stories of the Prime Minister's two-nation visit. Why am I saying that? Look at the agreements that have been inked between India and Japan. It's not just about a bullet train, but it's about the speed of a bullet with which India and Japan economic cooperation, strategic cooperation is being taken forward. Skilled labor and semi-skilled labor, their movement between India and Japan, technology cooperation, economic cooperation, investment cooperation, the eight-pronged offensive to deal with the threats of our times, that's something which is significant. But the optics in Tianjin will also be extremely significant. We have special guests. We'll talk about it in greater detail. But first, we bring you this ground report from Tianjin and the importance of the SCO summit and the bilaterals that Prime Minister Narendra Modi will have, both with the Russian President Vladimir Putin and with the Chinese President Xi Jinping.
Two Asian giants meet again. Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Chinese President Xi Jinping will hold talks in Tianjin on August 31st. This is Prime Minister Modi's first visit to China since the Galwan clash of 2020, which pushed bilateral ties to their lowest in decades. But this is not the first time the two leaders have sought to reset relations. In 2019, Xi Jinping travelled to the historic coastal town of Mamallapuram for the second India-China informal summit. Images of Modi and Xi visiting ancient monuments send strong optics of civilizational bonding. Just a year earlier, the two leaders had held their first informal summit in Wuhan. The Wuhan Consensus was built as a reset in ties, stressing that differences must not turn into disputes amid Doklam standoff tensions. Modi's first major visit to China came in 2015. The chemistry was on display. Modi became the first world leader to be received by Xi in his hometown Xi'an. Then came the Galwan clash in 2020, breaking the fragile trust. For 2 years, Modi and Xi had no substantive engagement. A brief handshake at the G20 summit in Bali in 2022 marked Prime Minister Modi's first public contact with Xi Jinping since Galwan. A year later in Johannesburg, another brief conversation on the sidelines of BRICS signaled the need for continued dialogue. Their last meeting came in October 2024 at the BRICS summit in Kazan, Russia. That meet helped push forward disengagement at friction point in Ladakh.
It's my great pleasure to meet you in Kazan.
From Mamallapuram's optics to Galwan's rupture, the Modi-Xi story swings between smiles and standoffs. All eyes now on Tianjin. Can this reset really hold? Bureau Report, India Today.
One important message that's gone out is 1. India does not buckle under pressure. 2. India charts an independent foreign policy. And 3. India wants good relations with all partners and friends. In fact, this is one example of India's multi-alignment. The visit to Japan has been extremely successful. There is a lot of anticipation about the meeting with the heads of state, both of China and of Russia. So these are big countries that are meeting and the world is watching. There are apprehensions in the West that the actions of President Donald Trump, the imposition of those 25% additional tariffs, which are seen as sanctions, they're actually pushing India closer to Russia and China. Was that actually the aim that President Donald Trump was moving forward with? There's also the fact that India charting an independent foreign policy is being well respected here. Joining me on this special broadcast, and let's try and make sense of these developments that are taking place. The Prime Minister's visit to Japan, the Prime Minister's visit to China. Will he be going to UNGA in September? Will he meet Donald Trump? Will Donald Trump come to India for the Quad summit, or is Quad now on the back burner? There are so many balls that are up in the air right now. Joining me on this special broadcast is Ambassador Rajiv Dogra, has been our ambassador to Italy, former Consul General in Afghanistan, in Pakistan. Also joining me on this special broadcast is Zorawar Daulat Singh and Robindra Sachdev. They're two very well-respected analysts and foreign policy watchers. And Ambassador Dogra, let me begin by asking you, the Prime Minister's visit to China after his visit to Japan, more for SCO, the bilateral is also being highly anticipated. But do we see this more as an SCO multilateral, or do we see this as some anticipation from the bilateral with President Xi Jinping after the Kazan BRICS summit direction that the two heads of state and government had given to their respective governments?
Well, I won't call it exactly a tutti-frutti, sort of a all-in-one, that you have bilaterals and you also attend a sort of multilateral summit. In fact, it is much more important because it's not only the summit participants who will be interacting, whether bilaterally or across the conference table. The moves here, the meetings here, and the results here would be watched across the world, especially in Washington and even in Tokyo. It will also be watched very closely in some of the other capitals in Asia, including Israel, including Houthis, whose entire leadership has been wiped out yesterday. So there are a number of issues and tricky issues that SCO summit would be catering to and trying to resolve, because there are differences even within the participants. For example, our concept of terrorism does not please Pakistan, which is also a member of SCO, or
Yes.
our sensitivities with regard to
Yes.
Israel's concerns in the Middle East may not be on par with what Iran feels like. But on the other hand, for India and for China, the importance is that this is yet another attempt by Prime Minister Modi. Please don't forget, Prime Minister Modi did not attend last year's summit in Kazakhstan because of the relations with
Yes.
China, which had dipped after Galwan, though that was not the official reason. Official reason was that there was a parliament session going on. So it is yet another attempt by Prime Minister Modi to make at least some kind of a move so that India and China get over the past and hopefully set a new direction so that Galwans are not repeated, encroachments do not cause tension and do not
Okay,
cause worry.
when the Chinese, when
More
yes,
importantly, there is also the
stay with me for a
logic.
moment, sir, because when the Chinese Foreign Minister Wang visited India, he's member of the Politburo, Zorawar Daulat Singh. He's the foreign minister. He's also the special representative on boundary talks. He said that the friction between India and China did not benefit the people of both the countries, the recent frictions that we saw. Do we see forward movement on demarcation? Because so far all that we've seen is disengagement. We haven't seen de-escalation, let alone de-induction. But do we see some steps being taken on the boundary issue for trade ties to move forward? Given this geopolitical situation, India-China trade, do we see more access to Chinese markets for Indian goods as China seeks more access to Indian markets?
Yeah, well, so the whole point is that is precisely what both leaderships are going to sort of now engage in this big level conversation, that what will be the terms of this new rapprochement, and both sides are going to have to come to some kind of a middle ground. So as far as I see it, the most important, significant impact of this is look at the backdrop, right? The context. I think India is now pivoting to what we call very clearly is a multipolar Asia. We keep saying multipolar world, but Indians have always said we want a multipolar Asia. Why? Because we do not want hegemony by any single power in this vast continent. Now, this particular forum is a multilateral arena which has independent great powers. You have, of course, the Russians, you have the Chinese, you have India, and then you have an array of other partners and potential future participants. So I think what Indian side is signaling is that I think it had invested so much in what was called the unipolar world. That world is now kind of fading away rapidly. It's behind us. And India is tiptoeing into what is
Okay.
going to be a new world order. The India-China relationship is a central part of what that new world order will look like. There are going to be differences. There's going to be no magic silver bullet in this summit. But I think what both sides have unmistakably given a very clear intent, which is that they are going to stabilize ties and they are not going to allow an outbreak of conflict in the subcontinent. And I think if that is the starting point, a lot of other low-hanging fruits of people-to-people connectivity, economic engagement, trade, balancing India's exposure to risky Western economies to now this greater Eurasian and Pacific space. I think that's where the next chapter is going to be written in India-China relations.
So it's already, some steps have been taken. India's taken some very bold measures, standing up to the United States of America, Robindra Sachdev. I will come to Japan and that big takeaway from Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Japan in terms of those 8-pronged strategy to improve ties, bilateral ties. It's almost with the speed of a bullet train that they want to take this relationship forward, especially both skilled and semi-skilled labor interaction between the two countries, engagement between the two countries, investment in defense, investment in India. But before that, how would the United States of America be viewing Prime Minister Narendra Modi's meeting with President Xi Jinping tomorrow and with the Russian President Vladimir Putin day after? Those sources seem to indicate that a Russia, India, China trilateral at a summit level is not happening.
Well, thank you, Gaurav. A pleasure to be with you, sir, and with our esteemed panel. Couple of things, I mean, in your opening comments, you laid out that it's optics playing out and, much of it, and of course, how is it being viewed in different world capitals. I see it as optopolitics. That is a layer of optics on the underlying geopolitics. We are in an era where it's optopolitics playing out in a way, right? That's one. Secondly, I think after COVID, the world started to reboot, restart, and then the Ukraine war happened, geopolitical fissures. the world right now is in a new mode of, as we are all saying, new world order is under construction. There is no world order, it seems, right now. There's a lot of flux, right? So it's a matrix which is under construction right now. And in this matrix, absolutely right, all moves by all, at least the heavyweights of the world are being watched by each other as to what impact they could have on the others also. So that's how we look at it. Here, I would like to make a small submission. There is talk of Russia, India, China, and the trilateral notional maybe. My submission is that we should name it IRC, whatever the notional is. If it happens, not happens, etc. That is India, Russia, China.
Okay.
In some years, let's say, wherever this framework becomes, if it becomes more formalized, there is always something to be said for agenda setting. So our agenda setting should be, when I use at least, and I'm suggesting it should be IRC. Now, that said, yes, a multipolar world,
Fair
I
enough.
think that's a very important one. And when India says, I think Minister Jaishankar said it in his meeting with Wang a week ago, India is implying that China, yeah, sure, but in Asia, you will not be the only pole. See, there's one thing if we say we are looking at a multipolar world, that means, okay, there can be other poles. But when we say specifically we want a multipolar Asia or multipolarity in Asia, that means we are conveying to China that in Asia also there will be multiple poles. And of course, we are there ourselves as such. Now, that said, yes, this is coming at a historic time.
No,
It
but
happens every year.
we've stood up to the United States of America. We've stood up to the United States of America. We've not let US bully India. We continue to take oil from Russia, and that message has gone across the world. Ambassador Dogra, in your appreciation, when we say we also want a multipolar Asia, not just a multipolar world, is there a meeting of the minds there? When we say we want more access to the Chinese markets, the trade deficit, which is $100 billion in China's favor, it really is not good for the Indian economy. How do you make inroads and headway in that direction, sir, maintaining peace and tranquility at the borders?
Well, firstly, as far as the multipolar issue is concerned, it's not like UN Security Council, whose membership is determined by a select few and then awarded to someone or the other. Multipolar is a fact of life, and the fact of life is, for example, India standing up to USA. Which other country in the world has done that? So we are already one of the poles, be it Asia, and I think soon to be regarded also as an important consideration in the world. Not world affairs, but in the world whose voice has always mattered from 1950s onwards and is going to matter increasingly in a world that is dominated by Mr. Trump. The second thing is your question as to what we can sell to China. China has to open up to us because it's not just a question of tariffs, but there are non-tariff barriers which China imposes on us. And there are actions of China. For example, they've withdrawn all the engineers from Apple factory in India. Those should not be done. So if there is to be a reasonable, equitable relationship, then the arms should be wide open, which China is not doing at the moment.
Okay. Let me also, for a moment, briefly, Zorawar Daulat Singh, touch upon the Prime Minister's visit to Japan, which is hugely successful, though all eyes remain on China. The investment that Japan is promising in India, the movement of skilled and semi-skilled labor, bullet trains, investment in defense, strategic investment, these eight-pronged cooperation, the lunar mission, how should one view that? Is that a strong prong of, the multipolar Asia and Asian giants coming together? While I am here in China, and for a moment, give me a moment, I want to show you this image. The excitement in China about India being here. The number of people who are here, the big smiles that you see on their faces, and they're all watching India Today, listening to the India Today broadcast live. There is tremendous enthusiasm here, and I wanted our viewers in India to know every word that we say is being recorded, including by these little children, and there is tremendous excitement. They ask about India, they ask about Indian cities and places of tourism in India. But Zorawar Daulat Singh, tell me, in your view, the significance of the visit of the Prime Minister to Japan.
Of course, it's extremely significant.
Okay, give me a moment. I'll try and reestablish that link with Zorawar Daulat Singh in just a moment. But Robindra Sachdev, you want to weigh in? This is Ambassador Dogra. Asia in a way standing tall in the face of American bullying, isn't it?
Well, exactly. And the timing is interesting because, uh, Russia is in a big conflict with Ukraine. And still, Mr. Putin has found time to come here, attend the summit, then stay on for the defense parade, which China is organizing. There is also Iran, which is here, Pakistan, which is here, and a number of guest countries like Turkey. So it's an assembly of countries who count in the world, maybe not in terms of their power, but in terms of their potential as a voice. India is, as I said earlier, is a leading voice. But let me also introduce a note of caution. This does not mean that a new world order is forming. That will take years. That will take a lifetime. The present world order will not be replaced in a hurry because it is served with and it has backers behind it who would not like it to be broken, tinkered, or amended against their wishes. Just to give you one example, when this world order was formed, America had 50% of global GDP. China today has just 15%. So we have to look at the issue realistically.
Yes.
But what is important is that America, I don't mean Trump, but American foreign policy and strategic experts would be watching this assembly very, very carefully because of the long-term implications it would have for America and its foreign policy. It would also be watched very carefully in capitals in
So
Europe.
let me quickly get Robindra Sachdev to weigh in on this. Robindra Sachdev, will this make America relook its bullying tactics towards India, or will America double down? Will they continue escalating virtually like in a game of poker, or will they be forced? Looking at the way India is standing tall, looking at the way India wants to accommodate American concerns, India wants to accommodate everyone's concerns and move forward, which is our civilizational philosophy. However, if America thinks that India will kowtow to Donald Trump at the White House, that clearly doesn't seem to be happening. So what will America do in your view?
America will not, back down or step back from what it is doing with regards to India. I mean, a few things could be that, depending on how the Ukraine conflict proceeds, and if Putin is still, kind of going strong, then America could, in fact, tariff India even more. Right now, we have 25% tariff on oil, right, because of oil. America could say, guys, it goes up to 50%. It could go that way also, that route also, right? So much in that sense, in the tactical sense, would depend upon how the Ukraine war proceeds and how America looks at India. But overall, I don't think, and in fact, rather, I mean, there are already talks by Pete Navarro and other advisors of Trump who believe in this philosophy, and they would say that, look here, India is posing up to a dictator. That is China. In fact, that's what Navarro said yesterday, that India should look and rethink that, does it stand with democracies or with autocrats and dictators? So America will keep on pushing under the President Trump dispensation, perhaps along that line of thought. But at the same time, yes, in the long term, our strategic interests with America are too deep and embedded. But unfortunately, on a small model, we might be at a fork in the road. It depends where, and then it might become too late for us to come back.
Let's see how this is a chakra view. Okay, I don't think so, but I will let I think that India is navigating this Chakravyuh very effectively, and perhaps in the long run, America, that is equally invested in a relationship with India, if it is, then it will too have to perhaps back off Whether it's in the Trump era or after 3 years remains to be seen. Both countries have invested 25 years plus post the Pokhran nuclear test, sanctions and the Kargil war into that relationship. But this is a story we'll be tracking very, very closely.